Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and we're here today because Trails in the Sky First Chapter has been nominated for Best Remake/Remaster at the Golden Joystick Awards. First up, the nominees for Best Remake/Remaster at the Golden Joystick Awards 2025. Courtesy of GamesRadar.com, we have Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, Gears of War Reloaded, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered, Trails in the Sky First Chapter, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, and then to round out the nominees, we have the Talos Principle Reawakened. For the size and scope of Trails over the years, I think it's rather impressive that a remaster/remake of its very first game is seeing so much positive feedback and coverage for it. It seems like everyone who touches this game just falls in love with it, me included. And this is even coming from someone who has just played the original Trails in the Sky right before First Chapter actually came out. And look, brief tangent, how the heck is Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, product provided by Nintendo, not here? Look, I have some rather strong opinions about that, but we're not here about Xenoblade. I just had to slip that one in. Now, do I actually think Trails in the Sky First Chapter is going to win here? I mean, it's possible, don't get me wrong. There is a very clear juggernaut here, possibly two with Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, but the bigger juggernaut, in my opinion, at least when it comes to gaming, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. I mean, come on. A lot of people love Elder Scrolls, and they kinda cooked with the remaster for Oblivion. I feel like if there's a clear-cut winner in this category for a lot of people, at least in terms of popularity contest, it's almost certainly Oblivion. However, I do think it says a lot about Trails in the Sky First Chapter and the nature of remakes overall in gaming right now, that it even got a nomination at the Golden Joystick, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see something Trails in the Sky related when we get to the Game Awards season as well. And you know, if we see it there, I will definitely be covering it. So what is it about Trails in the Sky First Chapter that has seemingly captured so many hearts and minds, if we want to use that term? I think a big reason why people are loving Trails in the Sky First Chapter is because it is a faithful remake of the original, which was already a really good game. It was just aged in certain key areas that could be rather off-putting for people, that the remake for Trails in the Sky First Chapter really modernizes, but not in the cringe, Hollywood way, in an actually good, competent way to make the game feel as if it was a game that came out last week or so. But it's actually a remake of a game from 2004. I think Trails in the Sky really shows the benefits of a good remake for a game and what it can do to breathe new life into a game that for a lot of people could be rather inaccessible or just impenetrable for a variety of reasons. The original game didn't have native voice acting, especially in English. It didn't have a lot of actual animations. It had the cheapy sprites, right? The combat was purely turn-based, which I don't personally mind, and I still love the combat in the original, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. And I think they've struck a really good balance between real-time combat and turn-based combat with the remake here, while also still maintaining a good semblance of difficulty, and just smoothing over a few of those rough edges that the original had. And I think the remake does a way better job of actually introducing a lot of key mechanics to the player and getting them up to speed in terms of how the game actually works and functions, which I do think goes a long way because the game itself is really fun, and I think it's more fun the more you engage with its various systems. And if you just don't really clock how the orbment system works in the original, that can compromise your enjoyment in terms of customization for the various characters, whereas here I think they do a pretty dang good job of actually laying things out. And I have a tips video for anyone who actually needs a bit of a reminder or brushing up, or just some overall advice. Alright, shameless plug aside, there's a few other elements to Trails in the Sky First Chapter that I think lends itself towards this remake that I've seen from people in my community reacting to me playing the original and then the remake, as well as just my own personal experience. Trails in the Sky First Chapter is not necessarily a plot-heavy game. There is a plot there, and it does pick up near the end, and I think it's a really dang good plot. But the focus of the story and the overall experience is on the characterization and the vibes going on. And I think when you just have the cheapy sprites from the original, that can work, and it worked for me, but for a lot of people, when you have a story like this, it can make things feel a bit too slow and meandering. Whereas in the remake, we have a bunch of sick animations, good voice acting that really makes the game feel like a 2000s era anime. Well, because it kinda was back in the day. It just, at least in terms of tone and feel for the characters. And when you have a story that is as character-centric as it is with Trails in the Sky First Chapter, having these animations, having these various camera angles, the cinematography, and the voice acting, and the new lines of dialogue we get going from point A to point B, it really breathes a lot of life into this overall game. And I think it does help these characters to really stand out and shine, because the things that are going on the screen, the things you're experiencing, it's multi-sensual, but also it's just more dynamic and visually engaging than, say, the original, which could be rather static at times. And like I said, for a story very much based on characterization, I think that goes a long way. And it's one of the key elements of modernizing for a remake that I think Trails in the Sky First Chapter really succeeds on. But it's not the only one. Like I alluded to earlier, the gameplay is also really dang good, and having that real-time combat for the overworld, and especially for the more filler enemies, where you can either weaken them and stun them and then transition into turn-based combat, just do turn-based combat all the time if you want, and then saving the turn-based combat for the really big boss fights, well, it adds a sense of variety, changes up the pace of the gameplay, but also, it just speeds through a lot of the more, what some people could perceive to be boring or slower sections of Trails, like going from point A to point B, while still incentivizing you to explore, to navigate, and to soak up the visuals this world has. And while the game is absolutely gorgeous, don't get me wrong, a lot of the more like open world sections are just kind of stretched out plains or rolling hills. So instead of fearing having to go into a battle with an enemy every 5 feet because they're kind of invisible in the overworld, hello original, what we have here is the ability to just rip and tear until your holy work is done, or you can just run through them if you really want to. It is very easy to see enemies in the overworld in this game, unlike the original, and it's also very easy to avoid enemies in fights if you don't particularly feel like fighting right now. Also, we can like decry yellow paint all we want, but let's also be fair here. I think for a lot of people, myself included, the added waypoints for the side quest and to just tell you when there's extra little bits of dialogue you can engage in has been rather welcome, at least for me. I know not everyone's going to vibe with something like that, but for me, it's nice knowing that I'm not missing out on anything, and I can also get to the bits of content that I particularly care about more than just overworld navigation, which I don't think is this game's strong suit, but it's also not supposed to be. Not every game needs to be this giant interconnected open world. Not every game needs to have a bunch of different objectives that you can do in the open world. Sometimes it is just, hey, these sites are rather pretty, and it also gives us a space to place various elements that you can go and interact with if you want. Here's a fast forward mode, here's a sprint button, take this game at your own pace. And it's a game that in a lot of ways feels as if it puts the controller in the player's hands. And what do I mean by that? If you want to just rush through the main story, and like that's your cup of tea, you just want to rush through the main story, you can do that. I did that in the original because I wanted to do side content in the remake. And if you're someone who wants to do a bit of side content, you can. If you want to do all the side content, you can. If you wish to stop and talk to every NPC, you can. The game's not going to force you to do any of that, but it gives you the ability to pick and choose what you want to engage with. In a way that feels very reminiscent to the original, it just makes things more visually clear and easily identifiable to the player. It's another one of those elements where it's going, hey, what did the original game do? Yeah, well, that kind of worked, but how can we, like, tweak it in such a way to make it a bit more seamless and a little bit more obvious in the remake? I think that does go a long way, not by itself, like any of the individual elements by themselves, but when taken as a total sum, that goes a long way. And I think it's producing a remake greater than the sum of its parts. Another little nifty element is when you're fighting something that's actually rather difficult in the overworld. Like sometimes you'll just get side quests that have you fight really big boss fights with just Estelle and Joshua and no other party members, and they can be rather brutal. And if your current situation isn't necessarily ideal to it, you can just run away, go back to the overworld, respec according to that fight, and then try again. Or go out and grind a little bit to get some CP, to get some like burst gauge, and then go back in. And it becomes way more manageable because the game puts the controller in the player's hands and says, hey, how do you wish to interface with this? For the boss fights, for the really big story beats, we're going to be a little bit more on rails and force you to say, hey, find a way to solve this puzzle. But in the overworld, we'll just let you do what you want, because why not? And I think because the game has that mix between real-time combat and turn-based combat, it really helps make these big boss fights feel more impactful, because it doesn't even entertain the idea that you can do real-time combat for them. It just forces you into turn-based combat, and you just go, oh, I have to lock in now. Again, a rather small detail, but it goes a decent way to build a hype and to make moments feel like genuinely good and compelling moments. You combine that with great customization for characters overall, again very much taken from the original, not just with the orbment system but also with the food system, which is also better in this game in my opinion, because you get first cook bonuses, and various characters specialize in various cooks, which may have existed in the original game, but hell if I could tell with that game's UI sometimes. But also, my god, the animations in this game are freaking gorgeous. It's like very basic beginner spells look like you're doing endgame spells from other RPGs. I don't think Trails in the Sky First Chapter is the only way to do a compelling remake of a game, but I do think it shows the example of how to do one that's more in line with how the original did it. It's a beautiful example of a faithful remake. We may have lost Why Is My Present a Boy? But I think for Trails in the Sky we have gained something great. Yeah, let's go with great. I'm already chomping at the bit to dive into the second game, right after I finish my stream series of Trails in the Sky First Chapter. It's been one heck of a time, I've been loving it from start to finish, and you know what? While I fell in love with Trails in the Sky with the original game, I think a lot of people are falling in love with it because of this remake. And I think that's a sign of a really dang good remake. So here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your favorite Trails game, or are you someone new coming into Trails? How are you liking Trails in the Sky, or what was your first Trails game? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. And while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And if you're someone who's finding, hey, I could use a little help when it comes to this game, I'm just not getting it, you should check out this video right here for some quick tips. Stay safe, everybody, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again!